the keeper of the yellow bamboo grove. Vishnu stopped breathing. That coppery smell of blood wasn't coming from nowhere. It was right behind his neck. And that voice, the voice whispered into his ear that night, still echoes in his mind, even years later. Don't take it. This is the story of 7 college students sent to the deep interior of Borneo for a 3-month community service program. 6 of them came home safe. 1 of them came home carrying something that never truly left. Welcome back. Here's the story. Part 1. The Arrival. The village of Rantau doesn't exist on any digital map. To reach it, Vishnu and his 6 companions had to endure an 8-hour drive, followed by a 2-hour journey upriver on a small wooden boat, passing through walls of forest that grew thicker and darker with every mile, as if swallowing the sunlight little by little. Fajar sat beside Vishnu on the boat, staring at the river water, a thick brown the color of stale tea. This is kind of creepy, Fajar muttered. No signal at all since we left. Vishnu just laughed it off. A city kid raised on Wi-Fi and streetlights. He saw all of this as an adventure, a good story to tell later. He had no idea just how true those words would turn out to be, only it wouldn't be the story he imagined. When the boat finally docked, they were greeted by a thin, elderly man wearing a worn shirt and a sarong wrapped around his waist. Pak Rushman, the village chief of Rantau. His face was warm, but there was something in his eyes Vishnu couldn't quite place at the time. A kind of vigilance worn into his bones, like a man who had lived alongside something he never dared to name. On their first night, after a shared meal at the village hall, Pak Rushman gathered the 7 students together. His voice shifted, lower, more serious. "I only ask 2 things," he said, looking each young face in the eye. "First, never go near the yellow bamboo grove at the edge of the forest after the late afternoon prayer time. Whatever hour that is, once it passes, you need to already be inside a house." Salma, one of the group members, gave a small, nervous laugh. "Why, Pak? What's out there?" Pak Rushman didn't answer that question. He simply continued. "Second, if you ever smell blood, a smell that doesn't belong, one that appears suddenly with nothing around to explain it, go inside immediately. Do not look back, not once, no matter what you hear behind you." The room fell silent. Fajar glanced at Vishnu, trying to read his friend's reaction. But Vishnu, like most young people who had never encountered anything truly beyond reason, saw it as nothing more than exotic local wisdom, folklore, cultural flavor. He had no idea that in 3 weeks, Pak Rushman's words would become the only thing standing between him and something far worse than death. Part 2. The first week and the legend. The first week went the way any community service program does. They taught the village children, helped repair the water lines, and slowly grew close to the locals. Vishnu, an environmental engineering student, was assigned to collect water samples from several points along the river running through the forest, part of a water quality research project he'd brought from campus. On quiet nights, once the village generator sputtered out around 10, the local kids would gather on the porch of the student's house, telling stories that made the hair on Vishnu's arm stand up, even as he tried not to show it. Mba Serena, an elderly woman regarded as the keeper of the village's customs, was the one who told stories most often. One night, as light rain tapped against the tin roof, she sat on a wooden chair chewing betel leaf and began speaking without anyone asking. Long before this village existed, the forest already had its guardian, she said. The old folks call it the Watcher, not a ghost, not an ordinary demon either. It guards a boundary. As long as we don't cross that boundary, it leaves us alone. What boundary, Mba? Andra asked, curious. That yellow bamboo grove, Mba Serena answered, pointing toward the darkness beyond the window. That's not an ordinary grove, it's a fence. And if someone crosses that fence at the wrong time, or takes something that isn't theirs to take, it will know. Fajar, sitting closest to the door, felt something strange, as if the temperature in the room had dropped a few degrees. But he said nothing, telling himself it was just his imagination. Mba Serena continued, her voice growing quieter, almost as if speaking to herself. There's an old saying here, what you take, the forest collects. Meaning whatever you take from that forest, the forest will demand it back, sooner or later, in a way you will not enjoy. That night, Vishnu slept restlessly for the first time since his arrival. He dreamed of glowing red eyes among the trees. But in the morning, with sunlight back over the village, the dream felt silly. Just an after effect of one too many scary stories before bed, he told himself. He was wrong. Part 3. The strangeness begins. By the 10th day, small strange things began appearing, one after another, like hairline cracks spreading across glass before it finally shatters. The chickens that usually wandered the yard vanished without a trace. No footprints, no feathers left behind. The village dogs, usually barking cheerfully every evening, suddenly refused to come out from under the houses as dusk approached, trembling and growling toward the forest, even though nothing was visible. The village children, who normally ran home from school laughing, started walking briskly the moment the clock struck 4 in the afternoon. One of them, a boy named Ejul, once whispered to Salma while pointing toward the forest, "Cock, they say it's hungry this week." Salma laughed it off, assuming it was just a child's innocent remark. But somehow the words stuck with her the rest of the day. Vishnu himself began noticing something different every time he walked toward his sampling point at the forest's edge. Nothing he could actually see, more like a feeling of being watched, as if a pair of eyes followed his every step from somewhere deep in the trees, counting, waiting. He mentioned it to Fajar one evening as they walked back from the river. You ever get the feeling like something's watching from the forest? Vishnu asked, trying to sound casual. Fajar stopped walking. All the time, since day 5, the two of them stood in silence for a moment, exchanging a look that needed no words. Whatever was in this village, or in this forest, was not just a folk tale meant to scare children. Part 4. The encounter in the forest. On the 14th day, Vishnu decided to collect a water sample from the farthest point in his research plan. A small tributary stream his map showed had never been tested. Fajar came along, despite an uneasy feeling he couldn't explain since that morning. They set out at 2 in the afternoon, carrying sample bottles, a pH meter, and a small amount of food. The trip should have taken about an hour round trip, but the path they took turned out to be more complicated than expected, and time slipped by without either of them noticing. While Vishnu crouched at the edge of the stream, filling a sample bottle with water, he felt something shift. The sky, clear blue only moments ago, slowly turned a deep violet, like dusk arriving far too fast, far too wrong. The forest insects, which had been buzzing endlessly, suddenly went completely silent. Silence. A heavy silence, one that felt like pressure against the ears. "Whis," Fajar whispered. "Do you hear that? There's no sound at all." Vishnu stood up slowly, the sample bottle still in his hand, and that's when the smell arrived. A thick, sudden scent of blood. As if someone had just poured something fresh right in front of them. The smell mixed with something older, something far more rotten, like meat left out under the sun for days. Pakrushman's warning rang instantly in Vishnu's head. If you ever smell blood, go inside immediately. Do not look back. But they were in the middle of the forest. There was no house for them to run into. Something moved from behind the trees. The figure stepped out slowly, unhurried, as if it already knew there was nowhere for the two young men to run. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in thick, dark reddish fur, matted and wet. Wet was something thick, something dripping slowly onto the ground, leaving dark trails between the tree roots. A slick, dark residue clung to the fur, as if it had just emerged from something no one would ever want to picture. And its eyes, two glowing red eyes, unblinking, staring straight at them, was something that felt like judgment. Not rage, not hunger the way the village children imagined. More like something calculating, weighing, deciding whether these two humans standing before it deserved to be allowed to live. Fajar gripped Wishnu's arm tightly, not daring to move an inch. Both of their breaths caught in their throats. A few seconds passed that felt like time itself had frozen. Then somehow, a single strand of fur came loose from the creature's body and drifted down to the ground, landing right near Wishnu's foot. And this is where ambition, the most human trait and also the most dangerous, took hold of Wishnu's better judgment. He'd once heard a story from a villager about a longing feather, a rare token said to bring extraordinary luck to whoever possessed it. In a split second, in the middle of paralyzing fear, some small part of his mind whispered, "Take it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance." "Wish, don't," Fajar hissed, eyes wide with fear as he watched Wishnu slowly reach a hand toward it. "Wish, don't touch that." But Wishnu had already begun moving, his fingers only inches from the strand. "Go home, don't take it." The voice didn't come from the figure standing before them. It came from behind Wishnu, so close, so clear, as if lips were pressed right against his ear. A heavy, rasping voice, like two stones grinding together, yet somehow still carrying the shape of a human whisper. Wishnu froze. His hand still hung in the air, mere inches from the strand. Part 5. Running home in fear. Fajar didn't wait another second. He yanked Wishnu's arm with everything he had, nearly knocking him off his feet, and they ran. Ran as fast as their legs could carry them, crashing through brush, stumbling over exposed roots, ignoring every scrape and cut along the way. Wishnu had no idea how long they ran for. All he could remember was the sound of his own ragged breathing, his heart pounding like it might burst from his chest, and one single thought pulsing in his mind: don't look back, don't look back, don't look back. No matter how strong the urge was to check if the creature was chasing them, no matter how badly curiosity clawed at the back of his skull, Wishnu held himself together. Pak Rushman's words from that first night, words he had once dismissed as mere myth, had become the only thing standing between him and something far worse than dying. They only stopped running once the dim lights of the student's house came into view in the distance, flickering through the trees like a lighthouse in a dark sea. The moment they burst into the yard, the thick smell of blood that had followed them suddenly vanished, as if it had stayed behind at the forest's edge, unwilling to cross the bamboo fence surrounding the property. Salma and Andra, seeing the state the two of them were in, torn clothes, pale faces, bodies shaking violently, panicked and rushed to help them inside. "What happened to you two? Say something," Salma shouted, gripping Wishnu's shoulders. But Wishnu couldn't say a word. He just sat on the floor, arms wrapped around his knees, staring blankly ahead, lips trembling as he repeated the same words over and over. "Don't take it. Don't take it." That night, a fever tore through Wishnu's body without mercy. His temperature spiked, Cold sweat soaked through his clothes, and he began muttering deliriously in his restless sleep. Unclear sentences, some in a language no one in the room recognized. Among his ramblings, only one sentence came through clearly to Fajar, who sat watching over him the entire night. "Something's sitting on the roof," Vishnu murmured, eyes still shut, his face slick with sweat. It's waiting for me to come out." Fajar looked up at the ceiling, listening, and even though not a single sound came from above, he could have sworn he felt something, a weight, a pressure, as if something far heavier than the night wind was sitting perfectly still on their tin roof, waiting with a patience that felt terrifying. Part 6. The Trace and the Warning. The next morning, Mbah Serena arrived at the house earlier than usual, before the sun had even fully risen. Her face was tense, her steps quick, as if she already knew something had happened without needing to be told. She crouched in the corner of the room where Vishnu had spent the night, examining the wooden floor beneath the window. There, stretching from the window all the way to Vishnu's bed, was a thick, dark trail of dried residue. A trail no one in the house could explain. "Who opened the window last night?" Mbah Serena asked, her voice sharp. No one answered. No one had opened it. Fajar told her everything: the encounter in the forest, the strand Vishnu had almost taken, the whisper they'd heard, and Vishnu's delirious talk about something sitting on the roof. Mbah Serena listened without interrupting once, her face growing paler with every detail. When Fajar finished, Mbah Serena sat in silence for a long moment before finally speaking, her voice heavy and careful. "It's a good thing you didn't end up taking that strand. If it had been taken, it would come to collect. And what it collects isn't an object. It isn't money." "Then what is it, Mbah?" Salma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mbah Serena looked over at Vishnu, still lying weak, his eyes half open, his body still damp from the night's fever. "It already knows his face," Mbah Serena said softly. "Already heard his voice. That alone is enough for it to remember him. If that strand had been taken, he would never truly leave this forest behind. A piece of him would stay there, traded for whatever he took." The room went quiet. Even Andra, who had dismissed all of this as overreaction from the start, now sat still with a pale face. Pak Rushman, who had come along with Mbah Serena, finally spoke, his tone leaving no room for argument. "He needs to go back to the city, today." Part 7. The Last Night. The decision was made quickly, but the boat that could carry Vishnu out of the village wouldn't be available until the next morning, which meant they had to survive one more night in Rantau, a night that felt far longer than any before it. Mbah Serena didn't leave the house that night. She sat near the front door, burning something with a sharp, pungent smell. A mixture of roots and tree sap she claimed could keep the boundary sealed. She told everyone not to open a single window or door, no matter the reason, until the sun had fully risen. Vishnu, though his fever had started to break, couldn't sleep at all. He lay with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound outside. Wind moving through the trees, the rustle of leaves, and every so often, a sound he couldn't explain. Something heavy walking slowly around the house, making one full loop, then stopping right at the front door. Fajar, asleep on the bed beside him, was jolted awake by the sound of heavy breathing that belonged to neither of them. The sound came from just outside the wooden wall beside his head. Long, deep breaths, as if something enormous was slowly inhaling, searching for a scent, searching for them. Fajar didn't move, didn't breathe. He just stared at the wall, imagining what might be standing on the other side of that thin wood, separated only by a few centimeters of aging plank. The seconds crawled by like hours. Then, whatever it was, shifted away. Its footsteps, if they could even be called that, grew quieter, more distant, until they finally disappeared into the returning sounds of the forest. Serena, still keeping watch by the door, let out a long breath she'd been holding the entire time. "It's gone," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else in the room. For now. Part 8. Epilogue. The next morning, pale-faced and having barely slept, Vishnu was escorted to the dock by the entire village he'd come to know over the past 2 weeks. Fajar hugged him tightly before the boat left, promising to send updates every single day once Vishnu made it back to the city. Vishnu never returned to Rantau. His spot in the program was filled by another student, and the story of what happened in that forest slowly grew into its own legend among later batches of students. A version that grew more exaggerated with each telling, drifting further and further from what Vishnu and Fajar had actually lived through. Years later, Vishnu, now working and living far from the noise of the city he grew up in, still carries a habit he's never been able to explain to anyone. He can never sleep soundly if a window is left open at night. And every time he catches a sharp, metallic smell, one that resembles fresh blood, his body freezes for a few seconds before his rational mind convinces him it's just something from the fridge or a small cut on his own finger. Only he knows deep down that the smell never quite feels the same. To this day, no one truly knows what that figure Vishnu and Fajar encountered in the forest actually was. Village legend says it's a guardian that existed long before the first human ever set foot on that land. An entity whose purpose isn't to kill, but to guard the boundary between the world we know and the world deliberately kept hidden from us. What Vishnu knows for certain is this: he never underestimates folklore again, no matter how silly it sounds, because sometimes the things we most want to dismiss as make-believe are the things we most want to believe aren't real. Precisely because deep down, we already know they are. And that was the story of the keeper of the Yellow Bamboo Grove. If you've ever had a strange experience during a community service trip, a hike, or a visit to somewhere remote, leave it in the comments. Your story might become the next episode. As always, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. See you in the next story.